Tonight's study of Likutei Halachos will be a focus on Hilchos Purim, 6th chapter, and we'll begin with paragraph number 9, number tes. And if things go well, we'll be able to cover most of the highlights of tes, yud, and yud aleph. I'm hoping that you were able to benefit from the link that I sent in the email. I would like to begin with an introduction. In Parshas Bo, in Shmos, we have Perek Yud Beis and Perek Yud Gimel. And we want to understand various elements in this parsha that have to deal with Pesach. And that's the major theme of Parshas Bo, Yetzias Mitzrayim, and the Chag HaPesach. In Perek Yud Beis of Shmos, there's an entire unit addressing the mitzvah of Korban Pesach. And then, when we move towards the end of Perek Yud Beis, the Torah tells us a story about the money of Mitzrayim. Moshe Rabbeinu asks the people of Israel to borrow kelim, utensils, kli zav, kli kesef, gold and silver. And the Torah testifies in Pasuk Lamed Hey, Uvnei Yisrael asu kidvar Moshe, the people of Israel fulfilled the request of Moshe, Vayishalu miMitzrayim klei kesef u'kli zahav u'smalos. They, so to speak, borrowed from the Egyptian silver, gold, garments. Vashem nasan eschena am beinei Mitzrayim. Vayashilum. And then the last three words in that pasuk is Vayinatzlu es Mitzrayim. And they emptied out Egypt. And this Vayinatzlu es Mitzrayim catches our attention because immediately afterwards, and this is the major theme of the next chapter, which is Yud Gimel in Shmos, we have the prohibition about chametz. We had some of that already in Perek Yud Beis, and then the mitzvah of achilas matzah. Shivas yomim tochlu matzos, b'yom hashvi chag l'Hashem, matzos yachal shivas yomim, lo yirah lecha chametz, v'lo yirah lecha siyar b'chol gvulecha. Sandwiched in between Perek Yud Beis and Perek Yud Gimel, between the Perek of Korban Pesach and Chametz U'Matzah, right in the middle we have the story of the Jewish nation emptying out Mitzrayim of precious gold and silver. If we turn back to the Bris Bein HaBesorim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu already promised Avram Avinu the Achar Kach Yetzu B'Chush Gadol, that the Jewish people will leave Mitzrayim with great possessions. And we see that there's an exceptionally pronounced or prominent emphasis on Bnei Yisrael and the Rechush Gadol and acquiring all these possessions. So these are the questions that we're going to hopefully try to address tonight with the Torah of Rabbi Nassan, and that is, what's unique about the Korban Pesach? How does it connect to the holiday of Pesach? And moreover, to the Golus in Mitzrayim. It cannot be coincidental that the mitzvah of Korban Pesach will celebrate the termination of Golus Mitzrayim. Then we're going to ask, what is the connection between Korban Pesach and Matzah and Chametz? Matzah and Chametz, by the way, are very, very similar, both in the letters that make up these two words and in the physical, material entity. You could have something that could be Matzah, and then all of a sudden a matzah, and it becomes chametz. And then we want to address the question of Vayinatzu Mitzrayim, right in the middle, sandwiched between the Korban Pesach that celebrates the termination of Golus Mitzrayim and the Parsha of Matzah and Chametz. Why this tremendous emphasis in which the story of the Jewish people taking out the possessions of Mitzrayim becomes almost a hub, the center of this entire wheel of Yetzias Mitzrayim? Why? Why so much emphasis that even as early as the Bris Bein HaBesorim, when our forefather Avraham Avinu finds out about the ultimate golus that we're going to experience, his descendants, it's v'achar kach yetzu b'rechut gadol. Rabbi Nassan here starts with, I would call it almost a bomb. He writes, Ikar Bechinas Pesach, this is at the beginning of number Tes, Hu L'saken Hashirus. Let's try to understand. Rabbi Nassan is now focusing all our attention on Golus and the purpose of Golus. He calls it Ikar Bechinas HaGolus. Ikar means the primary purpose and the goal of Golus Mitzrayim, he's going to reveal to us. And he reveals it with the word Litaken. Let's talk a little bit about that word Litaken. Litaken means when you have something that has the potential for good, but on the other hand, it's got lots of evil in it. And the two sides that are polar extreme opposites one of the other, what we call in fancy English antinomies, and they both connect to one episode, one enterprise, one experience, one object. And we are called upon, this is our avoda, to do birur. Birur means to select, separate the evil, and free the enterprise from evil so that now it's tov, it's good. That's called a birur. And by separating the good from the bad, we have what's called tov. We have a tikkun. Tikkun means literally to rectify. So we rectify the object or the experience by removing those elements of ra, and that's called birur, so that we can now elevate the object, elevate the experience as an experience of tov by choosing the good. And the challenge is to successfully do this process of birur, because unfortunately, the tzad hara, which drags us down, 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 is very powerful. And we have to somehow overcome all those pulls, those gravitational pulls that pull down, down, down through the process of birur, and do a tikkun in which the experience itself now becomes tov, because we've gotten rid of the element of ra. What is that entity that needs birur, needs tikkun, and is the essence and the goal of Golus Mitzrayim? I wouldn't have a clue. I could not even guess how to answer that question. I wouldn't even know where to turn, left, right, center. You're talking about defining the major, crucial, and essential goal of Golus Mitzrayim for 2 centuries plus. And he says that Ikar Bechinas Pesach, this entire celebration of Geula, of redemption from Golus Mitzrayim, is L'saken Hashirus. It's tikkun on Ashirus. Ashirus is the opposite of Anius, and it means wealth as opposed to poverty. And wealth, meaning possessions, money in the bank, silver and gold with which we can buy almost anything we want to, any object on the face of the earth, precious objects, pearls, gold, silver. That needs tikkun, because Ashirus could be an experience a reality that's full of Ra, that could bring someone really, really down. And we're going to see that Mitzrayim represents Ashirus. It's a very wealthy country, the wealthiest country on the face of the earth, full of deposits and inventories of silver and gold. And that's the Ashirus of Mitzrayim. The Ashirus of Mitzrayim, to some extent, is wealth that was taken from the Jewish people through the act of slavery, of oppression. I mean, Moshe Dover Dome, if I can give you a contemporary example in the 20th century, not so contemporary, I met someone in a museum in Vienna, Austria. We were both standing in awe, because I'm a big lover of art, of one of the most famous Vermeers. It's called The Painter at His Artwork. It's an incredibly beautiful painting. You could probably lecture on that painting alone for hours. And the man says to me, this must have been looted from the Jews. Again, we have no way of proving it. But the Nazis, Yimach Shemam, took our possessions, not just art. I mean, it's everything. Now, Yosef HaTzadik brings Ashirus to Mitzrayim. And Rabbi Nosson is going to make a gigantic deal about that, because it's only due to the fact that Yosef is the catalyst through which Mitzrayim achieved Ashirus, and Yosef gives the Ashirus and all the possessions a personality of tikkun, of birur, of tov, of kedusha, of sanctity. That's what's going to sow the seeds to make it feasible, to make it possible for the Jewish nation who come down to Mitzrayim after Yosef HaTzadik to succeed in this great challenge of tikkun hashirus. Yosef plants the seeds. Yosef sets the tone. La loso mea golus. Now we have a new definition of golus. We think of golus in terms of the Jewish nation finding themselves away from the land of Israel in exile on a physical level of location. But golus, exile, is an abstract concept. And it reflects on the power of evil to bring us down. That's what golus is all about, both on a national level and even on an individual level. We experience golus, each and every one of us, by the force of the Sitra Achra, the powers of evil that bring us down, and we end up in this dark golus. And now, golus becomes a challenge to defeat and push out all the powers of the Sitra Achra that are confusing us, that are making life miserable and dark. Overcome all that, and then bring out the light of Geula. And all this is a process of tikkun, of rectifying, of birur. Because there are two concepts that are mutually exclusive. They're antithetical, polar extremes. One is Kedusha, and the other, lahavdil, is Tumah. And the Ashirus of Mitzrayim is Tumah. And our job, and this is the entire goal of Golus Mitzrayim, is to bring out the Kedusha, the sanctity of Ashirus. Lahotzi Ashirus me'akum v'arishoim ulachniso liYisrael. We want to get a hold of that Ashirus. But which kind of Ashirus? The Ashirus of Kedusha. And we want to bring it back to us. They're stealing our Ashirus, using it to contaminate the Ashirus. We now have to free the Ashirus, get it back to its original owner, and that's us, and then uplift the Ashirus and purify it of all that tumah from the Ovdei Avodah Zarah, from the idol worshippers, and elevate it to Ashirus de Kedusha. So the ultimate purpose of Golus Mitzrayim is to elevate Ashirus, clean it and cleanse it of all its contamination at the hands of the Mitzrayim, and take that Ashirus, all those possessions, and uplift them to Ashirus of Kedusha. That's the tikkun, and that's the goal of Golus Mitzrayim. A mind-boggling chiddush. Yeah, I've been around for a while. I already passed 6 decades, so I'm well on my way to Emir Hashem, the 7th decade. And I never, ever saw anything like this. To give me a clue as to what Golus Mitzrayim is all about and what purpose is it meant to play and what role are we as the Jews meant to contribute in order to achieve the goal of Golus and then get to the level of redemption. I was never exposed to this. Maybe you gentlemen, well, I know Gershon has some threats of a connection, so maybe you've seen this before, but for me, this is brand new. He's revealing an unbelievable secret, and you'll see how it ties together with Korban Pesach, with Matzah, with Chametz, and with Bnei Yisrael taking all the possessions out of Mitzrayim. I mean, it puts so many different things that are disconnected. The greatness of Rabbi Nosson is that he has all these dots and he connects them, the dots that don't seem to be related one to the other. We're going to take that Ashirus, which they used, the Rishayim used it for idol worship. We're going to take this Ashirus and we're going to redirect it for Avodas Hashem. Lahagdil shmam v'nafsham al yidei zeh. By taking these possessions, this wealth, and elevating it by injecting Kedusha to it, we will thereby bring our name on a spiritual level, our nefesh, our souls, onto a higher level. And not only that, but our nefesh is connected to Hashem. Our Shem is one with Hashem. K'dei lahagdil Shem Hashem hameshutaf b'Shem Yisrael. Right? Yisrael is Sar Kel. The name of God is right there in the name of Yisrael. K'dei she'is avu nefashos rabos likol b'Shem HaKodesh. And this is going to, in a sense, arouse our desire of every Jew to be included in that Shem Kodesh. Now, Rabbi Nosson takes us on a journey. What does this new definition, new perspective of Golus Mitzrayim and its purpose and its goal, what light does it shed on the central mitzvah of Chag HaPesach, namely Pesach, Kishma, Korban Pesach? And he makes an unbelievable point. Korban Pesach ba min hatzon, shehu bechinas hashirus. Wow. We're talking about tzon. We're talking about a lamb, a little sheep, shepsala we call it in Yiddish. And that has to do with Ashirus? He says, if you open up a pasuk in Dvarim, Perek Zayin, it says, Ashtaros Sonecha. And the Gemara Chulin says, what is Ashtaros Sonecha? Shamashiros es Baleah. There are so many different things you can do with sheep. When you, let's say, do shechita on tzon, number one, you take its wool and you use it to make all sorts of beautiful garments. Like, for example, in the Beis HaMikdash, to weave Big Day Kahuna, or the curtains for the Mishkan. You take the skins of tson and you make out of it what's called a tof. Tof is a drum. And that tof is used in the service of the Almighty in the Beis HaMikdash. You take the meat of tson and you use it for a seudah, for a beautiful meal, for Shabbos, for Yontif, and for Korban Pesach. This means that we can take the tzemer off the back of a sheep, the wool, and we can dye it tcheles and make strings of tcheles for tzitzis. Look how many mitzvos we can fulfill with sheep, with tson. It's no coincidence there that in Golus Mitzrayim, we're talking about the Mitzrim who misused the Ashiras of tson. And Chazal tell us that tson in Mitzrayim was Avodah Zarah. They worshipped the tson. The biggest challenge for the Jewish people was Ku Mishchul Tson, when Bnei Yisrael were commanded on the 10th of Nisan to separate the tson, designated for a Korban Pesach, and take the idols, the deities of the Mitzrim. And why are the Mitzrim worshiping tson? Did you ever ask yourself that question? I can think of a million different animals. If you want to worship animals, you want to worship people. Maybe Paro was a deity, he put himself up as a god. But why tson? And the answer is simple. Because tson represents Ashirus. Ashiros sonecho shemashiros espaleim. And what do you do with wealth? You worship. And isn't that so true? We come from the United States, where money and possessions and wealth are our idols. We worship them. They become the center of all activity, all our hopes, and all our aspirations. It's all about making money. And we respect those who are wealthy. We look up to them. They're on top, on the heart. So it's not coincidental that the idols, the deity of Mitzrayim was tson, because tson represents and manifests Ashirus. Ki ikar nefilas Ashirus b'Mitzrayim shesham kol Ashirus. As we said before, the civilization of Mitzrayim represents the Ashirus of the entire world. And again, Yosef is going to play a major role in that. Is Ashirus the Sitra Achra. They use it for idol worship, the worst evil. And Yeshayahu Hanavi says it beautifully. They go down to the worship and the idol worshippers, the monasteries. And what do they have for a god? They have Ashirus, they have tson. Ki Mitzrayim Melea Giluim V'Avodah Zarah. Vehu Taivas Mama. It's unbelievable how Rabbi Nassan connects together Avodah Zarah and Taivas Mama. I mean, this is way ahead of his time. We know today how much people worship money and how much Ashirus is really Avodah Zarah. It's a different form of Avodah Zarah. There's like a higher calling in life. A deity that goes beyond Chas v'Sholom God. It's our own gods. And that's Ashirus, Mammon. And as Shlomo Melech says it beautifully, we'll see Rav Nosson quoting this pasuk from Koheles, Akesef Yanes Akol. That's the answer to all our problems. Kesef. We could buy anything in the world with Kesef. Ubishvil Zeh, Golu Yisrael Mitzrayim. Why was the Golus, the challenge of Golus, which, as we said at the outset, means to free all those potential sparks of Kedusha, of sanctity and Tov? Why is it in Mitzrayim? The answer is Kedei Levarer Ha'ashiris Misham. Our obligation going down to Mitzrayim of Birur, to separate and select good from evil, is in Ashirus, because It is none other than Mitzrayim that represent the epitome, the manifestation of Ashirus B'tumah, Ashirus D'avodah Zarah, money for the sake of worshiping money. The Kesef U'Bizav. And now Rabbi Nosson invokes what we, what the fancy academicians will call today Lurianic Kabbalah, the Kabbalah of the Arizal. And what does the Arizal teach us? That Kesef and Zav, imagine if you would pass by, I happened to pass by yesterday, a store that sells silver, Judaica store. It's beautiful. It like shines, it radiates. Take solid gold. Honestly, we don't have that much. I can't say that we have. But if you look at gold, it's like the light, bounces off the gold. It radiates, gold and silver. In the Torah of the Arizal, that's called Gvanim Elohim. Elohim means high up. They come from the higher worlds. And you should know, Rabbosai, anything that's beautiful in this world, in the physical world, comes from a higher world. Its shoresh, its root, is up in the heavens. The shoresh and the root of Kesef and Zav is Gvanim Elohim, beautiful hues, Hues, colors. They're like light that illuminates. But Gvanim Elohim come from a very high root, very high shoresh up in Shamayim, with tremendous potential. If the wealth comes into the hands of a person who's kosher and he knows how to use that wealth, he can uplift it to Gvanim Elohim. But now it fell into the hands of the Mitzvah. And instead of using the gold and silver as conduits to reach higher levels in the shorish of Gvanim Elohim, they did just the opposite. They brought it down to Tumah. They made it into an Avodah Zarah. And Son becomes the idol of Mitzrayim because that represents Ashirus. And why is it that man suffers so difficult challenges in earning a living? That all is a result of Chet. And when Adam Arishon sins out of a sense of desire, and he eats from the Eitz Hadas, that's the same identical desire as a person who loves money. And the Midah Keneged Midah, the punishment for the Chet of Adam Arishon, is Bezeas Apecha Tocha Lechem. That in order to get money and possessions to sustain yourself and your family, it's going to be very bitter, marirus, full of anxiety, full of worries and challenges. And that's because Adam Arishon did not live up to the birur, because when there was creation, there was shviras hakelim, there were nitzotos of kedusha that got lost, and he was not able to elevate those nitzotos shel kedusha. And the same thing applies with financial challenges. Our financial challenges are a result of our own self-imposed desire for money and concern and worry about money. We worry about money. We bite our nails about money. And there are people who are addicted to watching the market go up and go down, 1/8 of a point, and they this and they that. And the ganze Welt, Tutzach, the whole world revolves around money and worries about money. And that's because we are not able to do the birur, the proper tikkun, on Ashirus. Ubishvil zeh haya ikar hagolus, the challenge of Golus in Mitzrayim, which is the civilization, the cradle of Ashirus, of tremendous wealth. And that's our challenge. And when does the Torah reveal the challenge of Mitzrayim? To whom does the Almighty reveal the challenge of Mitzrayim? And the purpose of that Golus? Don't know the answer at once. To Avraham Avinu, back in the Brisbane of Asarim, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Avraham Avinu that his descendants will be Gerim and Avadim, B'eretz lo lahem, and at the end of this description, the Achar Kach Yetzu B'Rechush Gadol. Why the emphasis we asked at the outset on the Rechush Gadol? And the answer is, Ki zeh ikar atikun anas al yidei Golus Mitzrayim, the ultimate rectification that we successfully achieved in the Golus of Mitzrayim was Masher Beiraru. We did the Birur, Vahotziu Hashiras. We ripped the Hashiras from the hands of evil Mitzrayim of the Sitra Achra. We took it out of Tumas Mitzrayim and we elevated it into a level of Kedusha, of Mamon Shel Kedusha, Ashira Shel Kedusha, by getting rid of the stripping and purifying out the Tumah in order to select the good, the holy, the sanctified Mamon. Rabosa, you know what this means? If we only have the right attitude towards our possessions, towards our bank account, there's so much potential here to reach Kedusha, to elevate something to a process of birur from Tumah on one extreme to Kedusha on the other extreme. And that challenge faced us in Mitzrayim, and the Achakach Yetzu B'Rechush Gadol. Vayinatzlu es Mitzrayim. However, the pasuk says at the beginning of Dvarim, "V'tizahav." You remember that Moshe Rabbeinu gives Tochach at the beginning of Dvarim. Let me just see. I'm at my my neighbor's house. My internet went down. What do I do with the phone, Yaakov? It keeps ringing and I can't concentrate. That's why I turned it off. Oh, yeah. I mean, I didn't want to answer the phone because I'm sure it's for you, not for me. Yeah. All right. Okay, let me unplug it over. I turned off the phone. I'm sorry. Maybe it's from this. Maybe it's ringing. I don't know. Okay. Well, we'll survive. Thanks. Thanks, Yaakov. Okay, then. So he writes, what's Moshe Rabbeinu's criticism? You know that Moshe Rabbeinu in his rebuke, he says everything in an allusion form. You know, he never says it explicitly. So he says, V'di Zahav. V'di Zahav is an allusion to Chet HaEgel. So the Jewish people go out of Mitzrayim. They have emptied Mitzrayim of all its Klei Kesef, Klei Zav, and they get carried away by the Tumah, the negative Sitra Achra of Mammon, and they take gold and they make it into an idol. That's what Chet HaEgel is all about. Unbelievable. Rabbi Nosson is connecting all the pieces of the puzzle together. We tried to successfully achieve the birur and the tikkun in Mitzrayim of Ashiras the Kedusha. We didn't quite make it. We didn't quite succeed, as we say in Yiddish in Gansen. It wasn't a total success. And those elements that are negative in Ashirus, they came to the fore in the worshiping of the golden calf of the Egel Hazor. What is the Korban Pesach? Korban Pesach represents Tikkun Taivas Mammon, right? Because the Pesach is Tzon is Ashirus, and now we have to take that Ashirus, which was made into an idol by the Mitzrayim because they worship the Ashirus of the Tzon, and now we have to elevate the Tzon to levels of Kedusha through the bringing of the Korban Pesach, which is one of the highest levels of Karbonos that we have. And how do we eat the Korban Pesach? The Torah tells us in this week's Parsha, Parshas Bo, Tzli Eish. We've got to roast it over a fire. Eish represents lavas eish. When a person has a passionate motivation, inspiration, an energy force, it's called eish, lavas eish. And we want to take our ashirus out of our lavas eish and direct it towards avodas Hashem, towards kedusha. V'tzarich levara ashirus mitchilaso v'ad sofel kedusha ki hakesef, as Shlomo Melech says at Yanes Hakol, kol advarim shmolim yicholim liknos ha'yidei mamon. You can buy anything except for happiness, right? You can buy anything with mamon. Umizeh nimshach taivas v'chemdes mamon. What's the root psychologically of our desire, our craving for mammon? Is because if we get kesef, yanes hakol, we can get anything we want with kesef. A deep psychological insight here. Now here's another phrase in the Torah of Breslov, das amiti. Das is the way we connect to the Almighty above, and we get closer to Him. But it's all through emes. Everything is about emes. It's about being genuine, being truthful, being sincere, and not fooling anybody. And if you're dedicated to emes, to das or emes, now listen to the next three words. I hear the next three words, Shlomo Melech talking to me. Sheyodea shakol hevel. Now, let me ask you, my friends, who's willing to tell me, honestly, sincerely, in emes, raise your hand if you think that everything in life is hevel. It's all vanity. And all the paintings you've collected, and all the monies that you've earned, and all the stocks that you have, hopefully they went up and not down, and the real estate, and everything that you have, the beautiful furniture, and the great design. You took the top designer. She's the Alufa of Yushalayim, and it's all hevel. Raise your hand. I don't see too many hands going up. It's like when Rav Shach made a statement, this is about 40 years ago, I remember when I was in Israel, he said, television is the root of all evil, and everyone should get rid of their television. So all the reporters, after Rav Shach made the statement, they all went out to the streets. Nobody saw one television go out the window. Right? All of life is hevel. So let's throw all that money into Ki hamamon im kol advarim v'chafotzim sheyiknu hayodam hakol hevel. Why is it hevel? He says because when we get to the day of emes, yikol v'yoved v'lo yishar mimenu klum. We go back to our roots. Back, may offer atov, may offer tashuv, naked, with nothing. What do you take with you from this world? Absolutely nothing. The Mishnah says in the 6th parak of Avos, V'ein malavin lo liadam, who will escort a person up to Shamayim after 120 years? Lo kesef, lo zav, lo avonim tovos, lo margolios, ela Torah umaisim tovim. That's what we have for the next world. And here Rabbi Nosson goes on to say that where do we see the potential of Ashirus? What is the challenge? How do we elevate and bira the Ashirus? And he quotes a Mishnah in Kidim with a Medrash and Rashi's interpretation about the Rachel. The Rachel is a sheep. Ha-Rachel hazeh kulo kadosh. You can take the Rachel and make it completely holy. Rachel, as we said before, represents Ashirus, as we saw Be'ashtaros Sonecha. Karna. What do you do with the horns of a goat, of other animals? Lechatzotros. You make it into chatzotros for the Beis Hamikdash. Oro l'tov, samro l'tcheles. Hainu hatzon shi b'chinas hashirus b'sharsha b'kedusha. Its shorish, its root, as we said before, is high up in sanctity. Ukshenis barim v'nis kalim, when we reveal the sanctity of tzon, al yedeze dvarim nifloim nasim, we can make these beautiful, incredible objects. Shem nigudim v'shiros niflos. B'chinas se'u zimra utnu tov. What does se'u mean? Se'u means to lift up. We lift up the tzon and we turn it into zimra. We lift up and elevate the tzon. We convert it into tov. Vehu tikun, and now he plays on the word se'u. The word se'u can mean lifting up, but it could also mean masa umatan, which means, how do you say in English, masa umatan? Dealings and merchandise, selling and buying. What's the word I'm looking for? All these negotiations. What?
Negotiation.
I thought of that word, negotiations. Okay, so that's the Ashiris of Kedusha. And it all depends upon our orientation, our purpose, our goal, our lave, where our heart is. Al kain tzivsa Torah b'korban Pesach, shu tikun taivas mamon, she nitzla be'esh. We have to roast it with a fire, the korban Pesach. Bishlemus, rosho, the Torah says, al krov v'al kirbo, kidei levarer ulahalos, to elevate Hashiras Kula, every dimension of Hashiras, from the top to the bottom, El Kedusha, Mirosho V'ad Raglo. And now we can shed a light on the Isur Chametz, which is so prominent in our Parsha this week, Perek Yud Gimel of Shmos, and the mitzvah of eating matzah. Mind-boggling how Reb Nosson ties everything together. It's like he's the master weaver. And it's with Midrashim and Psukim and Rashis and Arizal and Zohars. I mean, it's mind-boggling. It's so fascinating that matzah and chametz are almost identical. You can have a mashu of a difference. Just leave the dough one more second to leaven, and it becomes chametz. From matzah, which is a mitzvah of achila, to chametz, which is an isur kares, is just a mashu. We're in very, very tight straits over here. We're walking a very dangerous tightrope here with chametz and matzah. And what is chametz and what is matzah? And here we have an unbelievably profound chiddush of Rabbi Nosson, which is really based on Rabbi Nachman. And that is that chametz represents kas, anger. A person expects to be successful in business, and he enters into, as Alan said, negotiations, masu matan, and he gets very disappointed. He may be disappointed in a partner, or in the firm, or in a competitive firm that's competing with him. And he gets angry. Why didn't I succeed? Why didn't I make the money? Sometimes he gets angry at the Ribono Shel Olam. Why didn't God let me succeed? Sometimes he gets angry at himself. Or more likely his wife, right? You got to blame somebody for your failures. As Adam Arishon said it, Ha'ish asher nasati imadi. And now, the difference between chametz and matzah, matzah representing that I'm satisfied with what I have, it's pretty pashut, stale as cardboard, it's flat, and the more money you pay for it, the less good it tastes, whatever. But anyway, he says the following: Chometz is ches mem tzadi. Matzah is mem tzadi, but instead of a ches is a hey. What's the difference between a hey and a ches? They're almost identical. There's only a mashu. So the difference between chometz and matzah is a mashu. And the word chometz, in its shoresh, in the root of the word chometz, is chema. Chema means anger. Chometz represents the anger of taivas mammon. When a person is so involved in pursuing mammon, he ends up with chema, with kaas, chas v'sholom, and that's chometz. And how were Bnei Yisrael able to overcome the chema and the chometz in Golus Mitzrayim when they were steeped and surrounded by the ashirus of Sitra Achra? It was because of Yosef. And the pasuk says in Bereshis, Hey lachem zera. Hey lachem zera. This is a statement of Yosef. The hey represents matzah. The hay of matzah, as opposed to the ches of chema of chametz. Hey, let it be like matzah, zera. All that's growing during the 7 years of plenty. Bechinas hashpas hashira shehimshich Yosef Mitzrayim. This is called HaKadosh Baruch Hu's makdim refuah lemaka. The process of healing preempts the process of disease. God gives us the cure before the disease. Emir Hashem. I don't know what vaccination you're up to. A few people told me they're up to number 4 now. 2 of them are going tomorrow for their 4th vaccine. And I asked them, when is the 5th? They told me probably in about 3 months. And it goes on and on. Anyway, getting back, I'm sorry, I got a little distracted here. He says, Yosef had to come down to Mitzrayim first. Yosef is going to bring the Ashiras to Mitzrayim. It's Yosef's mind that elevates Mitzrayim to be the richest civilization on the face of the earth. And therefore, the Ashiras was misgalgel and Mitzrayim alidei Yosef. Yosef was able to plant inherent in the Ashirus, the Kedusha of someone, a tzaddik who has nothing more to say except for God. That's all he talks about. Anything you compliment him on, he'll always tell you it's God. And even the brothers who sold him as a slave, that's also, says Yosef, part of a divine plan. That's the Kedusha of Yosef. Yosef is the manifestation and the personification of sanctity in a place which is completely surrounded. I don't have to tell you about H's Potiphar and the dungeon that he gets thrown in. Yosef is always surrounded by those who try to drag him down and contaminate him. And he takes Ashirus and brings it into Mitzrayim. And it's only because the Ashirus come from a kosher Jewish source of a tzaddik. Therefore, Yehei lahem, the Jewish people have a koach. Al yidei ze levaro misham ulachziro l'marakama, to bring and free this mammon, these possessions, and bring them back to the original owner, meaning to the Jewish people. V'chametz b'ches ze b'chinas chema v'kas, ki les chema below ches, al kei nikreis hamatzah lechem oni. Unbelievable. Rabosai, I'm telling you, if you're not going to jump for joy with me when I tell you this, then forget it. I have not succeeded at all. Rabbi Nosson asks the question, why does the Torah call matzah lechem oni? Lechem oni, a poor person's bread. And the answer is that the tikkun of Ashirus is anius. What does that mean? Does anybody want to become an ani? And the answer is yes. We all want to become ani if we understand what the word ani signifies. Ki ikar tikun hashirus u'anius, from one polar extreme to the other, from hashirus to anius. Dahainu, what is anius? Did you ever hear the phrase "Lufi anius daiti"? What is anius? Misha eno misgoy b'daito. You know, you meet these rich people; they're so full of themselves, and if they don't say it black and white, it's almost in the punctuation of every word that comes out of their mouth. I myself, me, myself, and I built up a company. I'm the CEO. We're on the stock market. We're ready to exchange on the exchange. I'm great. I came up with a brilliant idea. I brought up old businesses that are failing, and I was able to. Everybody has a brilliant idea. But what's anius? Anius means eno misgoya b'daito. He doesn't build himself up. He's not bloated. He's not chavetzdik. Machzik atzmo ka'ani. What does that mean? Machzik atzmo. He's a wealthy guy and he considers himself an ani. In Yiddish, we'd say "vi ken design." That's impossible. You've got millions of dollars in the bank and you consider yourself an ani? What is this anius? That's a tikkun pashus. He says, "Be'ezer mamachu beitu ani mamish oshu benini oshu osher muflok tamid machzik es atzmo kani." He considers himself an ani. Bechinas David Amel. David Amel says, "Ki ani v'evyon anochi." Now, who is David Amel? David Amel is Malchus Ugdula the Osho Gadol. He's wealthy. He's the king at a time in which the Jewish people achieved great wealth. And yet he says about himself, Ki ani v'evyon anochi. I'm constantly an ani. David Amel says in Tehillim, Vani ani v'evyon. Why? What's the deeper meaning of this? Ki ha'adam ro'ilo lahavin otzem aniyuso b'zeh ha'olam. A person has to recognize his poverty in this world. Ki afilu hatzadik, efshar lotzes yidei chovaso b'zeh ha'olam keneged Hashem. No matter what we do, in the eyes of God, we've never quite successfully fulfilled everything as we should. Ki ein tzadik ba'aretz, again, Shlomo Melech in Koheles, ein tzadik ba'aretz asher yaseh tov lo yechta. If a tzaddik has to admit his failures and his lack of success, then how much more so we rank and file citizens? Afilu lechem tsar umayim lachatz eno magia lo chas v'sholom lefi ma'asav. It's the recognition that everything that I have in life is a God-given gift that's gratis. I never deserved it. I never successfully served an Eved as an Eved Hashem. This is a deep concept, Rabbi. No matter where we're holding and what we've achieved, we have to realize we haven't even scratched the aleph. Chapi Shmaya, in comparison to that which is infinite, there's so much more. Infinite more alios and ascending and creativity. Hashem Yisbarach Zones Ha'olam B'Chazduk Mashkosim Nosein Lechem L'Chol Basar Kili Olam Chazdo, all the Basar. Basar representing wealth that we have and that we've received. It's all a matter of Kili Olam Chazdo. It's pure chesed. In Cain, if everything you have and all your possessions and all the money and the millions in your bank account, it's all a handout from HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chesed, then ein ani yosem mimenu. There's nothing more than an ani. Ki hu achil delav dilei. You see, people think I created. It's kochi v'yotzem yadi. My money, my possessions, my gold, my silver, it's all a product of my work. No, That's Hashirus of the Sitra Achra. That's where the forces of evil are trying to trick you into believing that you deserve to earn all that you have and it's your accomplishments. Name the exact opposite is true. It's Anius. Ukshemesim el libo ha'emes. When he finally accepts and embraces the ultimate truth, and he knows that everything he has is a gift of chesed from the Almighty, compassion, then he's in good shape, constantly. And then he'll have what the Mishnah in Avos says, Ezu Osher, who is a rich person. Asameach bechelko. Sameach tamid bechelko shiodeh shakol chesed gadol me'Hashem. Who can make a person more happy than the fact that God is bestowing, is handing him such chesed out of love and compassion? Vayideze yizkel ashirus mamish. And if he reaches this level of das, then God will grant him ashirus. Literal, material ashirus, because now God knows that he won't misuse it and abuse it and think that he's great and it's all his. God will rely on him that he'll take the song and he'll use it for every single possible thing he can use it for chatzotzros and for Korban Pesach and for Tov and Zimra. Bechinas man de'iu zer hu rav. He quotes the Zohar here, Mishu Katan B'Einov, a person who thinks of himself not as great, but you know what? Who am I? I'm not such a big shot. V'yeshlo is stapkus. He'll reach the level of being satisfied and happy with whatever God granted him, whatever gift from the Chesed of Hashem. Umekabel hakol bi'ava u'besimcha. Whatever he has, he accepts it with great love and joy. And then Hashem says to him, Yizkeh achakach li osher u'gidula. Mekimi mi'afrodol. Lo shivi ibn divim. I feel myself as a doll. Poor person, I haven't achieved. Whatever God gave me as a gift, it's a handout from the Almighty. It's Mekimi, and God lifts up the doll from Afar. Afar is the Bechina of Misa. We go back to the Afar, but Afar is also the source of life. Vayipapayapa, God created us from Afar, the Afar Tashu. Mekimi mi Afar. Forget about Misa. Give me life. And God grants us life because he's Mesim Atzmo Ka'afar. He considers himself with humility and sincerity like the offer on the ground. The achakach, and now God could rely on him. Kishazochel ashiris mamish, lekesef, lezav, lechafotzim harbe, lo yipol al yedezel is avos. What does he mean that he won't come to taiva? Taivas mama means number one, he wants more. You give him 100, he wants 200. He's never satisfied. Taivas mama means he looks at Yenim and he wants to keep up with the Joneses. And he keeps asking himself, why? What, is he more brilliant than I am? Why did he make a killing on the stock market? And look at me. I'm trying to eke out a living. So he gets jealous. He gets down on himself. You can have two brothers, twin brothers. One is tremendously successful, and the other's of chas v'shalom failure. And all this is kas, chema, yetzahara, sitra achra, ashiras detuma, in which wealth is the idol. We are worshiping chas v'shalom, mammon, and ashirus. Ki gam bi'otzem ashirus yachzik atzmo li'onim. But this person that God bestows wealth on as a reward because he feels himself to be an ani, and God can trust him that he has completely nulled and voided taivas mammon, is bi'otzem ashirusa. When he reaches success, yachzik atzmo li'oni, he still considers himself as a poor person, as someone who doesn't deserve these gifts of wealth. He'll always be happy with what he has. And I know we're running out of time, so I'll just mention this in the next paragraph. Rabbi Nosson speaks about the Rishonim, who are the exact opposite. They're full of kas. They're angry at God. They're angry at others. They think everything's coming to them. They view themselves as the center of the entire universe, and they want money, and money becomes their idol. And he goes on to speak about matzah in a very beautiful presentation. Halach anya. This, as we open the Seder night, is the lechem of an ani. I feel as an ani. And therefore, kol dichvin yesei v'yecha. I open up my home and I invite guests and I host people. And I realize and appreciate that any moment that I have is a God-given gift that I can share with others. And all over the Torah of Breslov, I would almost say the greatest of all mitzvahs in the Breslov philosophy is the mitzvah of tzedakah. Here we see it in this presentation. And later on, again in this piece, Rabbi Nosson is going to connect this to Purim. That's why it's in Hilchos Purim, because Chazal say that all the Ashiras of Haman, Yamach Shemo, was transferred over to Mordechai. From Ashiras to Tumah, Lahavdil Elf Avdolas to Ashiras to Kedusha, to the leader and the tzaddik of the Jewish people who knows that he's really an ani, that whatever he has, he doesn't deserve. God gave him, he's satisfied, he realizes it's chesed Hashem, and he dedicates his mammon for the benefit of others, of the poor people, of Klal Yisrael. He wrote on his will that we'll all be able to face these great challenges of the chema and the kas and the frustration and the desire for money. The taivas moment, which has influenced us from all sides. We are so surrounded by that society that puts money as the ultimate idol and the rich people as the idols that we have to worship. How many times do you open up the news and they tell you who's the richest guy in the world? And he declared bankruptcy and he's the richest guy in the world. So we should be Zocher Mirz Hashem to face those challenges, to take the Ashiras of Tumah, which is Golus, which is Sitra Achra, that brings us down to Tumah, and transform it by being Mavarer the Nitzotzos, because the Ashiras comes from a very high point, and elevate it to Kedusha, and dedicate it for the service of man and Hashem. Kain Yiratzon. Amen. Thank you very, very much for being with me tonight. Thank you, and have a wonderful Shabbos Parshas Bo. And think about some of these ideas. They're so profound. They connect so much together in Parshas Bo.
Rav Berzon, I wanted to ask about tzedakah, if you have a minute. Because at the end, is it from the perspective of I'm sameach b'chelko, so it's the natural way that I would go ahead and give my money to others, or is it a way to break the klipa, a way to break that taivas mamon by giving it away?
Well, for sure, on a lower level, it's going to be a battle to overcome the taivas mamon and destroy those klipos that are attacking us from all sides. But on a higher level, it becomes almost natural. Somebody comes over to you and he has a real need, and you could help him. I'm not going to take the money for myself. I'm no longer the center of the universe. I no longer say, as we say in Hebrew, Magia li, but rather, these are gifts from Hashem that are meant to be elevated to share with others. We'll see later on, not tonight, Betzalel. Betzalel has unbelievable abilities. Maybe he was the greatest architect that ever lived. I don't know how many years he went to architectural school. And what does Betzalel do with this? The pasuk says, "Re'u es Betzalel." Look at Betzalel. Learn from Betzalel. He takes those great talents, those gifts that God bestowed him, and he uses them and dedicates them for the Mishkan of Hashem, to build a Jewish community of Kedusha. Can each and every one of us answer the way Betzalel did? God gave me abilities, gave me possessions, gave me strength, gave me the possibility of raising children, of teaching Torah, of transmitting Torah. And I took it as a challenge and as a gift from God that could elevate myself, my family, and all the world around me. That's what I think Reb Nosson has in mind when he says that Anius is the tikkun for Ashirus. And I think thus it should be natural. It should come from the depths of our heart. Money is here today and gone tomorrow, so you might as well use it in the right way while you have it. And what are you going to take to the next world? I have a painting, it's actually a sketch from Rembrandt. The reason I'm attached to it is because Rembrandt had a rabbi. He was a devout Christian, but he had a rabbi. His name was Rabbi Menashe ben Yisrael. Maybe one day we'll learn together from his sefer. And this is a sketch by Rembrandt of Menashe ben Yisrael. It's the first etching. You know, they did many etchings. But be honest with you, I love it, but I'm not going to take it to the grave. And you know that tzaddikim asked, and this is common back in Europe, even before World War II, to be buried when they needed the wood because of the laws, whatever it was, to be buried with the wood of their tables. Why the wood of their tables? Because on their tables, they hosted guests. And they brought people together to study, to share Divrei Torah, to sing Zmiros, to appreciate a Shabbos meal, to elevate themselves, to make shidduchim, to create friendships, to undermine loneliness. All these were achieved at the table. And they wanted to go up to Shamayim with their table. Bury me in my table. Cut it down, make wood planks out of it. This was a minhag. What do we have in the next world? We have Torah and Ma'asim Tovim. So why put the emphasis on making money and who's rich and who has more money and who's the richest guy in America today, in the world, in Dubai, I don't know where. And look what a business I built up. I know a man who built a tremendous business. Only one problem. Never. He has no children. No one to inherit his business. So it was a great experience. You know, he spent his whole life building up a business, a beautiful business. But he's not going to take it to the grave, and he can't even bequeath it to his children because he has no children. It's very painful for me to talk about this. I happen to know this man very well. Anyway, we'll call it a night now. I think we, I'm here at my good buddy's house here, Alan Dubin. The internet in my house is down, and it's only in the schus of the Dubins. Alan and his wonderful Rebbitzin, Riva, and Yaakov helped me out here. I don't know if you've met the Dubins, but people that you want to meet. I can talk about Alan from now until doomsday. In high school, he won a Westinghouse finalist. Only 9 people worldwide are chosen as finalists. And in the yeshiva that I went to, which is called MTA, Yeshiva University for High School for Boys, you'll still go into the office and you'll see Alan J. Dubin's plaque that he won as a Westinghouse. He went on to MIT. In 2 years' time, he finished, in MIT, you have to do a thesis. an undergraduate thesis for a bachelor's degree. And he combined physics, math, and computers. And in a weak moment, he's a big honor. He told me that they are still using his thesis in MIT to this day. I have two friends that are geniuses, but he's the top. But they're big Bali Chesed. And when I asked them if I could use their study just for this shir, they were jumping for joy. They were so happy that they could help me facilitate this, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to take this shir and give the shir because I didn't have access to Zoom. All right. Anyway, should all be well. And please have a great, great Shabbos and keep in touch. Thank you so much.